in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons will breach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. Hey, I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
And here we go, 2024, the first show of the year, the first episode of Getting Ish Done. You know what time it is. You know what time it is. As you come and click that like button, share the stream. How's it going, Dr. Thunder? How was the holidays?
It's all right. It's all right. Happy New Year, folks. It is the, I tried to do the math and make sure this is right. I think it's the 10th day of Christmas. So we've got 2 more days of Christmas to go, and good stuff. So it's sort of an interesting intersection, because so you have the old calendarists, the old calendar Orthodox Christians. So their Christmas is actually not until tomorrow. I'm sorry, not tomorrow. It's not until the 6th. I think I'm right. January 6th. Old Orthodox Christmas. Let's see here. No, I'm sorry. The 7th. Theirs is not until the 7th. And let's see here. Christmas for the, I guess, new calendar Orthodox. I'm a new calendar Orthodox. Is the same as the 25th. But then you go up to, what is it? January. Let's see. What is today? Is today the 3rd?
3rd.
Okay. So then there's 2 more days, 4th and 5th. And then Christmas Eve, the 6th for the old calendar. And then, yeah. So it's always kind of a interesting sort of intersection there. And then
Speaking of intersection, well, did you hear what happened to Claudine Gay?
Oh, that was very clever. It was very clever, very clever transition there. Yes, I did. I heard that as soon as it happened. I think I got bombarded by messages and emails and then like publications that I subscribe to and stuff. Like, it all hit my email at the same time. But yeah, it's
Did you predict it? I mean, okay, or maybe I should ask, because I heard people whom predicted it along the mode of, don't worry, she's not going to get fired right now. Here's what's going to happen. She's going to resign in a couple of weeks, or she's going to go quietly. You know, that particular kind of prediction or that style, that happens a lot, right? Where,
right.
You know, you're like, oh no, we support her. We're in full support, right? And then she resigns 2 weeks later. Someone had predicted that. So, did you kind of hear of that prediction or vibe with that prediction? And are you surprised the way that this happened in this way?
I'm not surprised. I've seen this over and over. There was some strange circumstances surrounding the last president of the institution that I work at, and her leaving, where everyone thought that she was going to be around for a long time, You know, she had roots in Ohio and X, Y, and Z. I think her father went to the school that I work at, and so then she issued her resignation, and everyone was surprised. And it wasn't even one of these things where everybody in upper, you know, in higher up in administration, they already knew. They didn't even know. But speculation is something like there were some trustees that she rubbed the wrong way, and it was going to make it very difficult for her to be able to do the kinds of things that she wanted to do at the school. So she split. Now, when I heard that she was resigning, my thought immediately was she must have got an offer from somewhere like Harvard. Because there's really not that many institutions that are up from the institution that I work at. And but alas, no, that wasn't the deal. So yeah, so I've seen this over and over, and people will look you right in your face and say, "Oh yeah, I'm staying here forever," and then the next day they tendered their letter of resignation. It's just like, dude, I mean, you don't have to tell me, all your personal business, but you also don't have to like lie right to my face. Um, so yeah.
Interesting. Just a little word on an aspect of what you said. There's this idea of transparency, which is a new word. The word itself is not new, but the way it is used politically, socially, within organizations, corporate and otherwise, is relatively new, right? It's one of the new corporate buzz things to be transparency, transparency, transparency. And typically there are many issues with that one, or many aspects of that whole issue that one could look at. But one aspect of it is it's typically a sign that something has gone wrong. Typically, let's say you were to say, like, you're owner of a company. The owner of a company, doesn't need transparency. They are responsible, either a responsible person or not. If
Mhm.
you're a manager of a company, a CEO of a company, then you're responsible to the owner, that kind of a thing. But these days, we have these crazy bureaucracies. It's like a bureaucracy within a bureaucracy within a bureaucracy, where no one is actually taking responsibility, but there's a lot of talk about transparency. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but obviously the transparency that they're transparent about is the kind of BS that you were talking about. They're very transparent about telling you lies about things like, oh, I'll be here for transparency, but it seems like the responsibility, blah, 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 is kind of faded out. So anyways, just a interesting set of thoughts there, ladies
Well,
and gentlemen.
let me ask you this. First of all, to my previous point about the Julian calendar and the Gregorian calendar. Theophany for the Gregorian calendar, that's January 6th. So yeah, so that's kind of interesting thing. So that's the baptism of Jesus, theophany. All right. Now I was going to ask you this. So there are some various things that this president was sort of embroiled in, and some bad optics, and some some claims that maybe there was some plagiarism or something. What do you think was the bigger factor? These allegations of plagiarism, or the unfortunate optics associated with this congressional hearing?
I think it's more about the optics. Um, one of the reasons being the plagiarism thing was not unknown, right?
Right.
It had been out there. Am I correct? Right?
Right. You're right.
Yeah. So it wasn't the issue, and even within my kind of the kind of dirtiness that I'm willing to kind of accept and allow, I would not even, in other words, and I also assume that it's kind of the same kind of dirtiness that is generally allowed within a particular space. And in this case, I'm saying, okay, this particular dirtiness is a little bit of plagiarism, and the space is academia. A little bit of plagiarism in academia when you're not necessarily, it's not like you're the, this is an administrative position, right? That kind of a thing, right? So it's like, I think it's the kind of dirt where, people are like, they're going to look at you with a side eye, but whatever, right? We know what you did type stuff, but I don't think it's the kind of thing that will lead to them firing, especially since it's been there, right? So there's certain types of things where it's like, okay, whatever. Is she perfect? No. Is it ideal that she did this? No. She wasn't fired prior, or it's been out there, blah blah blah. So I think it was this optics issue, which makes it rather unfortunate for her particular story, because it's like, if it's that, because again, I think that this could have been handled so much better, right? In other words, it's almost they failed something that could have. I'm not saying that it would have been easy to handle it, or that the solution is necessarily easy, but the solution is kind of known. You go there, you prepare, you talk to some lawyers, and you talk to some people, and you come down with the way of delivering that solution. But the solution has to be like an emphatic no or yes, whatever it was, right? Regarding this is not acceptable.
All she had to do, and matter of fact, all of those women university presidents, all they had to do was just say yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes, and then go back to your institution. If some folks have some issues with you there, then you can provide your nuance and you can have that conversation then. Mm-hmm. That's all that was necessary. She could still be the president. She could still be the president of Harvard. All she had to do was just say yes. Mm-hmm. That's it. I mean, and it was silly too, because see, I don't like these congressional hearings, because it's like the time for these, these, what is it? House of Representative, folk to try to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, it's grandstanding time.
Yeah. It's like, dude, I don't even know who this woman was until she questioned this other woman and made her a little befuddled in front of everybody. And it's acting like she's all,
mm-hmm.
Team Israel and everything. And it's like, dude, this woman probably don't. Okay.
It was like it seemed like the Sandy Hook thing just happened yesterday, and kids were dead in American streets, and it's like, no, it was little roughhousing in Ivy League universities and people calling names and chanting from river to the sea and let's manage. But she made it seem like, I mean, like all that righteousness. It was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's just like, come on, man. And now, but yeah, I okay. Let's just go.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about productivity. Of course, we're talking about productivity, but these are the 9 golden rules, okay? And we're gonna let this guy speak for himself. But apparently, he has read many, many, many books about productivity, and he's kind of distilled it down into 9 concepts. We don't know how long, how many parts this is going to take, right? This might just be a part 1, it seems, but he has a list of 9. Let's get right to it.
Come back to the channel. So over the last 15 years of being absolutely obsessed with productivity, I have read dozens and dozens and dozens of productivity books and loads more on Kindle, but this is quite a lot of stuff. And so in this video, I want to break all of these down into a 9-step framework. These are the 9 steps that I've personally distilled from all of these different books and all the research I've done. And if you just follow these 9 steps, these are the main things that are going to absolutely move the needle for your own productivity. All right, step 1 is to set your goals. This bit that you're aiming for, because having a destination in mind helps you go on your journey and helps give you some sort of direction. Now, that doesn't mean that when we set a goal, we should be completely wedded to the outcome striving for. It does mean that if you really want to be productive, and to make productivity about our time intently and effectively toward things that matter to us, we need to actually define what are, in fact, the things that matter to us. Now, there's various books that talk about dozens and dozens of different ways of doing this. The way that I sort of synthesize all of these is into just 3 simple steps. Think about the long term, think about the medium term, and think about the short term. So the long-term time horizon is basically like stuff like, what do you want written on your gravestone? Then medium term, we're thinking sort of 3 to 5 years out, like where do I possibly maybe potentially want to be 3 or 5 years down the line? Now, the crucial thing for all this stuff is that you don't need to have perfect crystal clarity on this, and your goal.
Okay, looks like we're having some technical problems. We'll get this sorted out and we'll be with you. I wonder if, let's see here. Did he link it in the chat? Maybe I can put this up here. It might make it more stable on his side. Let's see here. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, that's crazy. I was about to comment that this guy is stealing all your points. I assume I was sharing up to the point where I paused and then disappeared, where he was talking about the steering the moving ship versus the ship that isn't moving.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and prior to that, he did do the no. This is not necessarily something that. In other words, the long term, medium term, and short term. I know that's also one of your things when it comes to talking to students about how to set their priorities and their goals and whatnot, right?
Right.
So,
yeah.
So far, his techniques, I don't have any issues with. Now, one thing, and I don't know what's up with my internet today. I'll try and share again. Maybe I'll reduce the quality of the video. But this goal setting thing, right? So far, what are your thoughts? Now, it's important that it is step one, for sure. It's very important that it is step one. He's kind of broken it down and operationalized it a little bit regarding, okay, here are some ways in which you can do this kind of goal setting thing. What are your thoughts regarding goal setting? And let me give some context as to why I'm asking. Well, what are some of my thoughts regarding goal setting? One of it is something that kind of makes me feel a little kind of iffy or weird. I don't tend to understand what people mean by it, or I did not tend to understand what people mean by it. Because, if you have my kind of personality, I tend not to have goals. However, I have a very clear image of the future and possible futures. And I kind of prepare myself maximally to be able to handle it by preparing myself to be able to handle the moment currently, right? So there's attention to want to be present in the moment, be able to deal the moment, have your head very far in all possible futures, but understanding that your ability to deal with the shifts and such is what's important. So let's not worry about the future. We'll know whether to turn left or right when we get there, right? But there generally is a vague notion of whom, quote unquote, I am or will be, or what the highest height is, what the highest standard is, what's that thing, what's the eye above the pyramid, what's even above that eye above the pyramid, what is your God, if you will, what is the God, what is God, blah, blah, blah. But I'm asking you regarding, in these kinds of terms, what are your thoughts regarding goal setting?
Yeah, so I'm actually, you described me pretty well. That's actually my tendency. That's how I'm naturally sort of wired that way. I actually I tend to resist setting certain things in stone, or like stating a really clear thing, because I know there's going to be adjustments made. However, when you're a leader and when you're teaching other people, it's necessary for you to figure out what are the usual issues that other people have with getting to their destination. Actually, see, I framed it wrong. Being successful, feeling fulfilled, in their journey. What tends to impart a sense of meaning and purpose for most people. And what I noticed is that when you set objectives and goals, and goals and objectives could be different, but they could be the same too. One is just released over time, and and the other one is not. You're not as sure when it's going to happen, but you're aiming in that direction. But if they have goals in mind, then when they get to the point where they achieve that goal, then that gives you a sense of accomplishment and success. And it's like, okay, I feel like I'm heading in the right direction. I'm doing the right things. See, I got to this point I said I was going to get to, and I followed through. I did what I said. You know, it gives you an opportunity to see a reward for discipline and struggle and all of that kind of stuff, right? Now, me personally, I don't actually think I need a reward. I don't think I need a reward for struggling. And I don't know if that sounds good. It probably sounds bad to people.
I think okay. So let me try to put in some imagery or some other kinds of ways, something mechanistic regarding what you're saying, because I think I understand it, right? As you mentioned, I was describing myself earlier, and you said I described you. So it's not that you don't need, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, a reward. You have a. It's almost like if normal people's movie is I start now and then I go through the hero's journey and then I get the reward and I get the gold and yay. Your movie is more like 1 second long every second, right?
Right.
Where you're trying to live the hero's journey at every breathing moment and going through it and seeing the, that kind of a thing. So your frame is much more, you have way more frames per second or per any given time than people tend to do, right? You're constantly being the phoenix rising from the ashes and getting destroyed again and rising from the ashes all within a day. Does that comport with where you're generally?
It does, and I think it also. So I'm an improviser, like so. And I liked one thing that you said when you were talking about basically creating it. So you're developing a skill set that allows you to it allows you to have success at all of these possible realities. You don't know which one's coming, and so you need a skill set that's wide enough to be able to deal with whatever comes. And so in my mind, I develop skills. I have this big basket of skills that I keep developing because I perceive that I'm going to need a different tool to do this particular thing, or because I really want to do this particular thing. I don't know when it's going to happen, but at some point I can see that this skill will be useful. And, and so then I have these, so then I can improvise. I can make it up as I'm going, but it's not the same as a person that doesn't know the, it's not the same as somebody that can't actually play, doesn't actually understand music. For instance, if I'm using this analogy here, it's not like somebody that can't play, like a 2-year-old that picked up an instrument and they can make some honking sounds out of it. I suppose that's improvising too, but it's more like someone that can really play and therefore doesn't have to plan a bunch of stuff every I don't know, hour, every 5 days, every month, it's not necessary. I just know how much time about it's going to take for me to do certain kind of tasks. I have an idea of what those tasks are going to be. I have to schedule things because other people are on schedules, and I have to be willing to teach things to people in a way that they can, they can interface with, that makes sense to them, that fulfills them, but it's not necessarily the way that I learned or my particular approach. So
Yep. And regarding this being the first thing, which is set a goal, obviously from a it makes sense that that would be the goal. You know, you're talking about productivity, you're talking about working towards an end. Hence, you want to set the end. That will be step number one. There's just one more thing I want to mention about this, and I think he probably has more to say regarding how he's gonna about this goal setting thing. But the goal setting or that decision making, or let's talk about, let's say, for example, New Year's resolutions, which is kind of it's a very great example of people's goal setting patterns and the behavior associated with it. I think that it is a struggle actually, because a lot of times people think, oh, it's the and the struggle is this. I don't think people really understand what it means to set a goal or make a New Year's resolution. They think it is the external proclamation or the just thinking it, right? Or something like that. Now, what actually needs to happen, and what somebody that started emphasizing this for me, that I just listened to, and he emphasized this particular thing in his own weird way, is what I got out of it. It's not really, it's this guy Grant Cardone, right? He's a crazy wild guy, but I like him because he's intuitive, and as a result, most people don't understand him and they think he's talking nonsense, but he's dropping gems. He's an intuitive feeler, so it's a little disorganized. But anyways, that aside, he talks about making a decision as being the hardest and most important thing in terms of making money, which is his thing, right? How do you become a billionaire? You got to make the decision, right? I'm like, well, I decided, well, of course I want to be a billionaire. And then it's like, really, do you? Because there's an identity change. This would be like the extreme thing I'll say, and then I could park it, right? It's almost like an identity change that you have to do if actually that New Year's resolution is going to work, right? So this decision that you thought you made, the goal that you thought you set, putting it down on paper is not what it is. There's an internal aspect, okay, the mechanisms of which we need not get into at this point. But that internal aspect, which is akin to an identity change, is the most important part, right? If you're going to get into this whole goal setting thing, right? Obviously, we talked about the intuitive path of kind of moving through, setting skills, having the ability to have these different tools to handle all possible futures and all these other types of things. However, when it come down to the typical behavior of setting the goal, New Year's resolution, or whatever it may be, it is akin to an identity change within you. Otherwise, that thing is never going to work. So people think that just having this goal and then just grinding through is an important thing. But I don't know. What are your thoughts about that? This idea of people say they want to be billionaires, but no, they don't want to be billionaires.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What they want is they want the benefit of being a billionaire.
Yep.
But not the lifestyle of being a billionaire. And yeah, those are very different things. One thing that happens as you become more and more successful, it's lonely on the top, and I know that just sounds like stuff to say, but really what it is that there are fewer and fewer people that have any idea of what it takes to get to the next level. There are fewer and fewer people that it's worth your time to hang out with. Because if the point is, always be the dustiest dude in the room, right? You always want to be the dustiest person. Well, the thing is, as you climb, you're going to get to the point when there's a whole lot more people that are dustier than you than those that, are less dusty. It's just it's problematic. It's challenging. But, I was watching earlier today, what is it? Think Before You Sleep or whatever. Is that what is it? Think Before You Sleep. I can't remember what it is. It's a big channel, 700,000+ subs. And he's grown quite a bit over the last couple of years, because it seems like maybe even just a year and a half ago, he was at about 100K subs. He's really grown a lot. Does really good content. He said some stuff that's been pretty, adversarial and critical of like red pill stuff, but he's like more of a conservative minded sort of folks, and he kind of calls out a lot of the feminist stuff. And so it's that kind of thing. But he was talking today about, and this video I think he published a couple days ago, but he was talking about, this is how you tell. He was talking. He's been critical of like the fat acceptance and all like this. And he made this point in this video where he's talking about this woman that she gets online. She's morbidly obese, and she's talking about how this is how I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like giving up right now. I'm an emotional eater. I'm just going to eat a lot of stuff right now. And then she like films herself eating this stuff, shows what it is she's doing, and what she's going to eat next. Oh, now I'm going to eat this whole thing of Twixes. Now I'm going to eat it's just like ridiculous. And he's criticizing several aspects. But one of the things that he brought up is this idea of meal prep. So if you say you want to lose weight, because this woman, she started her social media to detail her weight loss journey, but she's like plus 200 pounds from when she started, right?
Oh,
and he was talking about how you can't just muscle up past an obvious addiction. You can't just willpower your way out. Okay, so in the analogy that I'm trying to draw pretty clumsily right now, saying that you want to be a billionaire and that being the sort of willpower component versus all of the things that you'd have to do, all of the structures you'd have to set up, all of the things that would have to be, just so in the actual lifestyle that you'd have to maintain. He used an example about bodybuilders, how when they're cutting and they're getting close to a competition, they must absolutely meal prep. That's all the meals, basically all the meals for the whole week at the beginning of the week. Because if you have to think, you're going to make a bad choice. Because you're taxed out. You're stressed out to the max. So if you have to make a decision, you're going to make the bad decision. Right? And in this woman's case, she got to the point where she's emotionally eating. Well, where was that food? Now, some of the stuff she ordered, but she also had like a bunch of stuff in cereal boxes, with crappy cereal. I mean, she had a bunch of stuff within sight. Just you can just see in the videos. And she's making a lot of bad choices. So you can't just want to lose weight. You have to actually be that. And the way that you actually be that is all of this meal prep stuff, all of these steps that they put in place. Even these 12-step programs, and them setting you up with someone that has more experience than you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you call them and say, hey, I want to drink really bad. And they try to distract you. Right? They try to talk to you about this, that. They try to talk you off of that. And often it's the case that you need time. If you have some time, you can push yourself a little bit further away from, the edge, a little bit further away from the edge. You can't willpower your way. You can't willpower your way. There's a structure. There's a process. There's logistics associated, and it's you're just not going to be able to do it. You just can't do it. I mean, I'll be the first person to admit, and people think I'm pretty disciplined, but I'll be the first person to tell you that exercise has not been a problem for me. If anything, it's diet. Right? But the thing about diet is if I have all of the right stuff right there in front of me and I don't have to make any decisions,
It's
I have
going
no
down.
problems. I have no problems. If I have to choose, it's there's a high percentage there's a high percentage bad choice that will be made. So a lot of it is you have to have the actual stuff that you need on hand. And you're not going to know that. You're not going to know what that stuff is unless you have access to people that are in the know. So
Very well put. Access to people that are in the know, Shout out to y'all in the chat. Have you clicked that like button? If you have not, quickly, and kindly X out of the chat, go ahead and click that like button and come back as we continue here. He's still on step number 1, which is about goal setting. So far, he's told us about having a long-term view, medium-term, and short-term, understanding fully well that these things could change and they're not necessarily going to be fully crystallized and whatnot. And then start moving in a direction because you can always change, because it's easier to steer a moving ship, right? As Dr. Thunder says, the steering wheel in your car is absolutely useless unless the car is moving. When the car is moving, then you can turn around. You can make a complete 180-degree turn if you were going in the wrong direction. But if you
That's
never
right.
move, ain't nothing happening. All right,
That's
let's
right.
continue.
Because, as they say, it's much easier to steer a ship that's moving than to steer a ship that's stationary. And then the short-term time horizon, which is basically what are my goals for the year. And in fact, all 3 of these methods are the final chapter of my own book, Feel Good Productivity, which you can check out below, order with a bunch of bonuses, but that'll be linked down below. But essentially, the way to think about this short-time horizon is the 12-month celebration. In each of the different areas of my life, in work, in health, and relationships, what do we celebrating 12 months from now? Let's say I'm having dinner with a friend, we're celebrating the progress we've made.
Hey,
In health front, I'm into the gym consistently 3 times a week for the last 12 months. In work front, I'm celebrating a milestone of my business. Maybe on the relationships front, I'm celebrating getting a girlfriend, whatever the thing might be. And so if we're condensing all of these.
Yeah, I hear you.
Hey, check it out. I think the best thing to do is send me the link. I think you email me the link to the video, and
Got it.
and I'll play it from over here. I think I think it'll work better with whatever's going
All
on.
right. Yeah, who knows what's going on? So for now, I'll definitely be on sharing, right? And then let's see here, remove that. I'll just talk about what I heard while.
Sure.
So basically, the thing was Borging, I assume.
Yeah, it was working for about half of it.
Okay, so he was mentioning celebrations while I go ahead and send you this email here. So having, let's say, a 12-month celebration, what do I want? Because it's about setting goals, right? What do I want to celebrate 12 months from now, right? And for me, typically this is a backwards process. It's interesting that I typically look back and I'm like, okay, what happened? Did I actually get to where I was supposed to get to? Oh crap! Beginning of 2023, I had some IRS stuff. Okay, so I need to set up some structure. I need to do certain things. I need to learn certain things. I need to blah blah blah. How much of that did I actually do? Right? Just kind of incidentally, you turn back and look at that. But generally speaking, what are your thoughts? Even though we'll have to replay this part on the video, what are your thoughts about that idea of looking forward, saying what do I want to be celebrating 12 months from now, and also this idea of yeah, definitely if it happens, then look back and make sure that you checked off all those boxes that you said you were going to check. In the IRS case example that I gave, now that was something I was forced to do, right? I had to do it. So it wasn't that I sat down and set a goal. So they kind of forced me to get my act together. So, but what are your thoughts about what I just said?
Yeah, so I don't know that I do like a line item evaluation of things that happen. I mean, I'm aware of things that I want to improve, and I'm sort of daily trying to make tweaks and improvements to the way I do things. As far as moving forward, I don't, okay, so the New Year's resolution thing. Let me say something about this. I think this will work. So I've had some issues with my back over the last several weeks, and that's kind of knocked a significant dent in some of my fitness goals. But one thing that I try to do is I still want to try to put myself around what it is that I want to be doing. And so frequently what I'll do is I go to the gym, although I'm just sitting on the couch. There's a couch at the gym. Everybody else is working out. I'm working on something, I'm writing some emails, I'm handling some stuff or whatever. But I still want to be around where business is being done, because I don't want myself to get too used to not being around that and in too far away from reminding myself of, yeah, this is where business is done. This is where I want to be. And so, yeah, so I I did that today in the car. As we were pulling up, I brought my son with me. And he goes in, they do a thing at my gym where he can stand there for 2 hours while I'm working out or whatever I'm doing. So I went in and I took a shower, and then I sat on the couch for an hour and a half while I was doing emailing and stuff like this. But before we came in, he was concerned that his friends, I said, well, my friends are not going to be there. Might not be kids there. And, it's January 3rd. And I said, trust me, there'll be a lot of people there.
Yep.
And then I also said, I'll give them till the end of next month, and then it'll be back like it was before. And he's getting to the point where he understands the humor. Like, he understands that people don't tend to follow through with certain kinds of things. And so we had a good laugh, and then we went in. Yeah. So I don't want to be that guy. Right? I don't want to be the person that says that they're going to do a bunch of stuff, and then fizzles out. I don't want to be that person. I want to be the person that's able to sustain, whatever the momentum is, whatever energy that I need to keep doing it. I want to be that person. So to the extent that I've, over promised and under delivered in the past, I try to fix that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I sent that email, by the way.
Yes.
So this not wanting to be that guy, and then the overpromising. If you have that, there is you have to be a harsh critic of yourself if you want to get things done in the world. Okay, if you want to get things done in the world, and the world is outside of you, the world doesn't care about you. Facts don't care about your feelings, quote unquote. Nobody really cares about what happened to your mom, even though they may be saying it. They really are they want the monthly accounting report. They want their paycheck, whatever it is. Their paycheck is more important to them than, I guess, whatever, right? That kind of a thing. So you mentioned a couple of things I want to highlight. Number one is you mentioned your son being aware now that people don't follow through with certain things. Steadfastness, right? Which is a characteristic which was emphasized in a couple of episodes ago. We talked about, building the team and some of the attributes that are more rare, or this aspect of attributes that are more rare and hence more valuable comes up over and over in our conversations. And steadfastness, just being able to stick to it and having a level head, Jesus Christ, right? It's so rare and hence very valuable, right? If you're that person that will stick to it. And then understanding, just to add this nuance, that there's some people too whom because they fizzle out, they then start beating themselves up to not doing the action rather than picking it back up and going again. In other words, some people think if I don't do it every day, if I'm not consistent and I'm not, 3% body fat all the way through, then, it's no. See, life, you got to understand that you operate in cycles. You want to tighten up those cycles, right? You know what I'm saying, Dr. Thunder, right? You want to
Yeah,
tighten
but
it up.
yeah,
But
and this is why people say stuff like, it's the journey, not the destination, right? You have to I don't want to say be in love with the process because that sounds ridiculous, but you have to enjoy the process. It sucks, it's painful, whatever, but it's got to be more than just the destination. It can't just be, I'm just doing this because I want whatever the goal is. Now,
Mhm.
that can be a motivation, and that can be the strongest motivation. But if you don't actually enjoy the journey, then good luck. Because for the most part, you're not going to get. You're going to fail a lot. So, failing being defined by the goal was not reached.
Mhm.
Okay, so it can't just be getting to the goal. That is what I don't even like using words like motivate, but that motivates you. It's got to be more. It's got to be something deeper than that. Yeah. So
I think you're maybe a little bit ahead in where you are at on the video,
okay.
but yeah, we can start from this little ad thing here.
All right, here we go.
Which you can check out down below. It's available for pre-order with a bunch of bonuses, but that'll be linked down below. But essentially, the way that I think about this short-term time horizon is the 12-month celebration. In each of the different areas of my life, in work, in health, and relationships, what do I want to be celebrating 12 months from now? Let's say I'm having dinner with a friend and we're celebrating the progress we've made. Maybe on the health front, it's like, oh, I'm celebrating that I've been to the gym consistently 3 times a week for the last 12 months. Maybe on the work front, I'm celebrating hitting a revenue milestone with my business. Maybe on the relationships front, I'm celebrating getting engaged or getting a girlfriend or whatever the thing might be. And so if we're condensing all of these different productivity books into the simple 9-step framework, the question that you want to ask yourself is, am I clear on my goals? What am I actually working towards? And if you're not clear on that, or you don't have an idea, then it's worth sitting down and doing some journaling for just 20 minutes to think about it. And if you're clear on that, then you can move on to the next step. And the next step, once you have set your goals, is to break them down.
Okay, so what do you think of this?
Yeah, so he was landing that point there of point number 1, right, of setting your goals. One thing I can add to this whole goal setting thing is something I used to ask people. They would come to me regarding, it doesn't really matter why they came to me, right? But I would ask them, like, if you were stuck in an island, you have all the resources, you had a magic lamp that gives you a genie with infinite wishes, right? What would you do? Right? What would you spend your time doing? And you'd be surprised how many people actually can't really clearly answer that. But otherwise, they have they want something. They want all these things in life. But when you tell them to go to that island by themselves, this relates, by the way, with quote unquote, it dovetails with something you mentioned about loving the process. Yeah, that's you said that, right? Not me. But it dovetails with something you said about loving the
I think
process.
I
In other
said
words,
enjoying the process.
okay, enjoying the process, right? Now, if you don't know the kind of thing you'll be doing with that island with infinite resources, then it's you're not the kind of person who's going to be enjoying anything you do. Okay, you at least need to, because this is the basic, because there's layers to this, but basic, what would you enjoy doing in an island with, if you just had all the time and whatever, right? I could think of many things that I could start that, like, and let's say, for example, you give me 200 years to do it. Damn, I'll take it and break it down into like 20-year chunks, master this thing, master the other thing, do this thing, yeah, as I'm sure you can imagine, right? The things you would like to do, right, with this time just by yourself. But just an interesting thought experiment that I think might help a percentage of people is to sit back and say, hey, I'm in an island. I can do anything I want to have these resources. What is the thing that I actually want to do? What are the skills I want to hone? What is the dent in the universe I want to make? Do I want to build sandcastles? Do I want to write poetry? What do I want to do? What will make me satisfied? If you immediately, because an answer could possibly be, one of the answers somebody gave me was that no, they would want to do something for other people. In other words, they were not comfortable in that island alone, which I know, by the way, it's kind of rigged towards introverts, right? this island by yourself is rigged. I get it, but if you're someone then that has an extroverted goal, you clearly show you that, yeah, you know what, I really want to be in quote unquote public service, doing something for a community, being part of a community, an integral part of a community in X, Y, or Z way. Whichever way it lands, this is a good way for you to try to understand what you might enjoy doing, which is going to be natural to you. And then typically, I know this is the last point, the ideal here is what you want to then do is build yourself up to the point where this is the only type of thing that you're going to end up. In other words, you want to then outsource everything out. You want to work yourself out of a job, as you say, right? So you're like, okay, I want to be the guy that directs, right? But I'm not just going to be directing. And directing could be anything. It could be directing a choir, it could be director of a company, blah, blah, blah. I have to start from the ground level, though, okay? I have to start from the ground level, doing all these things that I don't want to do, working myself out of each job, right? Hopefully instantiating opportunities for other people to then take up these positions so that you can then be at that position where you're at the top directing. There is no other way to just hop up to that level. But I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm right there. I've described this whole pyramid thing where when you start off, you're doing everything, you're saying yes to everything, and it's a bunch of stuff that you don't like doing, but at least you have an idea of what it is that you want to do. So the only way that the pyramid works is if you know what the top of the pyramid is. So you have to have a direction in mind. You have to have some sort of idea of where you're going. The beauty of getting a job, sometimes I think about this because in academia, I think there's a lot of students that they don't know what they're doing. And so, they'll start off with these sort of exploring kind of degrees and hopefully they'll figure it out. It's kind of an expensive place to figure stuff out. What I would suggest if somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing is right out of high school, get a job. Doesn't matter what the job is. Almost doesn't matter what the job is. But some kind of job where you have to work 40 hours. Okay. And what that job will do is it'll teach you things that you don't want to do. It may help you to speed up on thinking of stuff that you want to do. And there may be some aspects of the job that you actually enjoy. You could have lucked up in a situation where the job has some upward mobility. It has some upward mobility. And actually, it's the kind of job where there's some general skill sets or some general skills that you have that are valuable to the company and actually are also fulfilling to you. So you could actually you could get lucky and end up in a career kind of situation. Or it teaches you a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do, and then you figure out what it is that you want to do. You get a better idea of that, and if that requires school, then you go to school for it. Because if you don't have any, idea of what it is that you want to do, then I don't know. I'm not sure what to tell you. That's the first objective. I mean, a GPS doesn't help you if you don't actually have a destination to go to. I mean, why you even have a GPS if you're not going to go anywhere?
100%. Yeah, it's interesting. I was listening to this guy the other day who said something. He mentioned the opposite of, well, how do you know where you're going to go if you don't even know where you are, right? He was going somewhere else. They're going internal, right? That kind of stuff, right? So you got to figure out where you are. Shout out to I believe S Empowerment here, emphasizing the point that you are making here. When it comes to, let me just mention one more thing about this kind of shout out to Zongo in the chat because he gave me a particular critique, which I know it makes sense. Which is for a certain type, I tend to be a little abstract, even though I don't think I'm being abstract at all. But the kind of abstract is I'm over here talking about myself, but I don't give examples really about. I don't talk about actual things that happen in my actual life in a way that a normal human being will talk about, right? Like, oh, and then this time I went to buy this house in this particular place, and then there were two real estate people, and this guy told me this, and I got, I'm typically just talking about the idea, the particular arrangement, the modalities, things that could be generalized, conceptualized, intuitive, that kind of a thing, right? So, but let me give, let's say, an example, even though it's still an abstraction. So what's the thing that I want to be, right? What do I want to be? What is that thing amongst, there could be many sub things. Like I mentioned, if I was in that island, I'll have like every 20 years, I'll have a target of something I want to perfect. But overall, at the top of it, and this has to do with, again, sets of hierarchies. I mentioned that there is a mercantile hierarchy or a merchant hierarchy, for example, right? We understand that one, where who's got the most money in the bank, who build the most industry, right? We get that hierarchy. There is a military hierarchy, quite different, right? It's about, who's got the biggest whatever, right? And who did it the most, who's the general patent. We have this other hierarchy, more of like the priest/scholar type stuff, right? Manifests itself in different ways, very much in line with the Indian kind of caste system, by the way. And ultimately, why does Ike do what he does and tries to make money and all this kind of stuff? Is really because I like to have that freedom to be the it all sounds kind of weird, and I'm always awkward talking about myself in particular, but it is about the priest/philosopher hierarchy, which seems very different because you would think I was doing the merchant thing, right? You would think, oh, this guy is a clearly capitalist doing that, but no, that's just a means to the end. Really, what I'm trying to do is be a monk. I'm putting that out there. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. Okay. Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. But I have a clear goal as to why all these things I'm doing here in the merchant hierarchy and all these other things, blah, 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 is really serving the purpose of me just being a monk philosopher out here. That's really what I'm trying to do. But having said that, I'll shut up about it. And this before we start the next one, which is about breaking them down, kind of makes sense, right? And I assume he's gonna maybe bring in some of the concept of I don't know the guy's name, but I know the name of the book is Getting Things Done, right? And it's we reviewed that book a while ago, probably a year and a half ago, right? Where he talks about bringing your concepts. You have these ideas in your head of what you want to do, but you got to take them from your head and put it down on paper. Take it from your head, put it down in an Excel sheet. Take it from your head, put it down in a calendar, right? Because it doesn't belong in your head. Your head is not meant to store crap like that, okay? It's meant to deal with real-time stuff. So take all that stuff, put it down, break it down into sub-steps, and write it down somewhere. So now it's out of you, that kind of a thing. I anticipate this is the road he's going to start going down. But anyways, on to you.
All right, let's keep going.
Now, it's all well and good having goals, but really setting the goal does not actually help you make progress towards it. It's better than nothing, but obviously there are a load of steps involved once you've set the goal to actually making it happen. And therefore, this step is really all about breaking our goals down into what are the tangible actions that we can take to make progress towards those goals. Now, again, depending on how many of these productivity books you read, there are dozens of ways of trying to figure this out. I like to keep things simple and boil it down to the basics, which is basically the question of what inputs do I need to do on a weekly basis that are going to get me to this particular goal. For example, for health, if the goal is to build muscle, or you can turn that into a SMART goal if you really want to, then the weekly input would be weight training 3 times a week with progressive overload. If the goal is I want to write my first book, then the weekly input would be I want to spend 10 hours a week writing. I don't really believe in like making a task list and like breaking the goal down into like the 18,000 different things it takes to make the goal, because that becomes way too complicated. And a lot of kind of balancing reading about productivity advice with actually doing the thing is finding that sweet spot where you're taking the advice on board because the advice is generally good, but it's not so overboard that it starts to become overwhelming. So just to simplify all of this down, what are the things that we need to do every week to make progress towards this goal? And then once we're clear on that, we move on to step number 3, which is one of the most important ones, which is to create time blocks.
It's like this dude is stealing all my stuff.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, so plot your course. You know, so you have to know where you're going, what it is you want to do, and then you know, then you have to, you know, figure out some goals, get some goals in mind, and then now you have to have a structure that will accommodate the actual work. And so you got to get your calendar out and make sure you have daily, weekly time to do the things that you said that you wanted to do to get to your destination. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you set that course. You're gonna sail to the new world. How many weeks is it gonna take? Okay, and then you tack on 50% more. Oh, it's supposed to take 10 weeks. Assume it will take 15 weeks. How many rations of food will I need per day? Blah blah blah. Or I want to make $200,000 this year. Okay, what can I do? I can sell something for $1 to $200,000, 200,000 people. Okay, I can sell something for $10 to 2,000, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, breaking it down into regular chunks that you can kind of see and do definitely helps. And I'll mention this thing about the externalization, which is the simple thing that is on the screen here by S Empowerment, talking about the memory kind of compensation thing. Look, as a matter of fact, we have computational limits. I don't know if you've noticed, but we do. Okay, some people's are higher than others, but we all do. Hence, we use mathematical language, for example, right? Hence, the lowest level will be like counting with your fingers, for example, right? You count with your fingers because you can't. Well, you got to externalize things, externalize stuff, and when you externalize, it unburdens you, whether you believe it or not. Simply from the pure kind of mechanistic, in terms of power perspective that I'm talking about, your computational limitations, it is obvious. But also psychologically, it unburdens you. Okay, having these things in your head that you need to do is very stressful. I don't know if anybody has ever experienced that. Okay, having things in your head that you need to do is stressful. Having it somewhere in a whiteboard, in a journal, that's way less stressful. It literally removes it from your head, puts it somewhere where you can look at it all the time. I tend to have my big long-term goals actually right on the blackboard behind me that I have in the studio here, right? I because I don't want it in some Excel sheet, or not necessarily like an Outlook calendar. Those are for like my regular everyday month, week, blah blah blah. But some big things that I need to do, right? That I know, you know what, it's kind of maybe a bit of a side quest, or it's a new adventure, a new business, a new thing. I write it down on that blackboard. It's there. It's external. It's big. I can't hide from it. You know, I come into this, and then every once in a while, going back to the previous point of coming back to check to see, kind of mysteriously, I'll find out when I look at the list, I'm like, oh, I actually did do this one, right? This one is almost done, that kind of a thing, right? Those are just my comments.
Yeah. I'm a logistics guy. I mean, I'm a big picture guy. I'm a, you know, intuitive. You know, I like to make adjustments as I'm going, collect all of the tools necessary for the journey. I don't know how I'm going to use them. I don't know exactly what the journey is going to be. But I kind of like that. That makes it engaging. But I'm also a logistics guy because especially when you're doing technical stuff, the logistics can be the thing that either facilitate and make things work smoothly, or it can totally jack you up. And no matter how skilled you are, how capable you are to, improvise, roll with the punches, no matter how smart or intelligent, no matter how, talented you are, you still can't overcome certain technical limitations. So you have to figure out what those limitations are going to be. And I have found that one of the most powerful forms of this is using the calendar. Get the calendar out, because that will facilitate everything else, because you can see in real time and make adjustments to how much time you need to do each particular task. And you'll get better at certain things and it'll take less time, and you'll maybe underestimate at times, and then you'll recognize the next time you need to take more time. So it's something that it actually is a flexible. It's not a static sort of thing. And it facilitates all of the other stuff.
And just it's kind of interesting that I recently got into the calendar. It was for the past month now, I've kind of been outside of the calendar. Now, was I not planning? Was I not doing things? No, I was, but I was in a chaos mode, mainly because a lot of things had piled up, or a lot of things had rushed in. And in that chaos mode, I now have pieces of paper, literal pieces of paper, things like that I'm doing, and things tend to pile up on top of each other. Literally, things cannot fit in the calendar, right? In that kind of a thing. I'm having to kind of juxtapose, prioritize, blah blah blah, and it's not a healthy place. In other words, that's why I call it chaos, right? But I understand that maybe every once in a while that'll happen, once every 2 years, once a year, who knows, right? And sometimes it's a good thing because it represents typically opportunity. But today, literally today, I was able to get back in the calendar, where I was started setting things where okay, so today I'm going to do these 4 things. It's going to take this long. And I recognized today, oh yeah, I'm back. I must have settled. I must have accomplished, the chaotic things I was trying to do. Right. I'm out of the 10,000 sheets of paper and this and that and all these other different things, and just kind of all over the place with regards to how I plan myself or my activities, down to the calendar again. But yeah.
Well, let me say this. The calendar is important. It's important because it gives you the actual space to be able to give time to things that are important. And I know that sounds like, simplified. Of course, that's what you're doing. You're trying to do the important things. The thing is that often, and part of this could be a definitional thing. I don't get the sense that a lot of people are really giving themselves time to do those things that are important. I think that they're basically running around putting out fires.
Yeah, they're doing the quote unquote urgent things.
That's right. It's all urgent stuff and no important stuff. The thing is when you fail to do the important stuff, that stuff becomes urgent stuff. So if you can figure out how to give, in your calendar, give yourself enough time to do the important things, then you'll have more bandwidth when actual emergencies that you couldn't plan for occur. Because of course that's life. That's going to happen. Especially if you have kids, and especially if you, I'm sure if some Moneybags dude contacted you and said, "Hey, I want X, Y, and Z. You're the guy to do it for the next week. I'm gonna pay you this amount, and I want you to come out here to Timbuktu." And I'm sure you're going to say, okay. And of course, that's going to create all kind of challenges in your schedule. I mean, it's going to jack a bunch of stuff up. But if you have no bandwidth, I remember. Okay, so, and this is a situation where I know now that I was doing too much stuff. Okay, so, and I was pretty organized. Like I had stuff on my calendar, but it was starting to bubble over the edges, and I really didn't have any bandwidth. I didn't have bandwidth. Was not what I wanted to say. I didn't have any buffer. I had no space left. So I got this offer to do this tour. It was Japanese. It was a Japanese tour. I've never been to Japan. And I told them no, which was, when I look back at why I told them no, I wish I didn't do that. It was not the best thing, but I told them no because I was already booked solid through the 2 weeks that I would have had to been gone. And I was still working at a church, and this particular church, I already had a sort of precarious sort of dealing with the pastor there. He was already kind of showing me his butt every once in a while, and being a jerk and everything. And so I was concerned about, if I take this thing, what's going to happen? What I should have done is I should have taken the gig and not worried about that. But I didn't have enough space to be able to do that. I didn't have enough bandwidth. Now I do. Now if somebody called me and said, "Hey, I want you to do this 2-week thing," I'd say, "Okay, let's go." And my schedule is just more accommodating in that way now. So it's not just about catering to the important things. It's about being realistic about how much stuff you can take on and actually do a good job, and put yourself in a situation where the kind of opportunities that you actually want, when they arise, that you can actually say yes to them.
Yep. You're a mobile car wash person, and you could go around washing every Honda Civic, right, for $50. Everybody hitting you up and your schedule is filled. Or you could decide, you know what, I only do Range Rovers and Bentleys and certain types of clients, and they come less often, but it's going to be a bigger spike. Hence, I'm going to kind of arrange myself in such a way that, yeah, I'll take on the Honda Civics as well. Or, to our previous point about only doing certain things, you outsource the Honda Civicing to a couple of other guys. Let's say they're Mexicans. Shout out to the Mexicans. They're good workers that you hire, right, to do that part of the job while you focus on the high ticket clientele, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And I was this is a good point too. I was watching this. It must have been a YouTube video. Man, I watch a lot. I'm constantly taking in information. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of where it's from. It could have been on TV. Probably not though, because I don't tend to watch those kind of programs on TV. So it was probably YouTube. And this guy, this black guy, he was talking about how to know when to raise your prices, and so he started raising his prices, and he gave this example. He said, well, I was cleaning cars for $20 because he was just trying to get in and do it wherever he could do it at. And he says, well, I need to raise my prices to 200. And he was concerned that if he raised it that much, that he was going to lose a bunch of clients. And the truth is he did lose clients, but the one car, even if he only got one car to clean for $200, he would have had to clean 10 cars to get $200.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to get to the point where you're like, okay, do I want to be working just to say I'm working and punching the clock, or do I want to be like growing and increasing my earning potential? But if you're going to do that, that means you're going to have to be willing to let some cats go. Mm-hmm. And thank you. You helped me get this thing going. I'm very good at what I do now because I got a lot of practice. Now I'm trying to get the bag.
I think S Empowerment is saying that he saw that. Yeah, that is a great example. That is a great example there.
All right, here we go.
And essentially here, the idea is that we need to make the time for these different things that we've decided, these weekly inputs. We need to make the time for those things in our calendar. Now, my favorite method for this is called the ideal week technique. Basically, that involves just creating a new Google Calendar, calling it your ideal week, and creating calendar events for what time you want to wake up, what time you want to go to sleep, what time you're having lunch, what time you're at work, what time you're hanging out with the friends and family and date night and all that stuff. And you start off creating the blocks of time for the things that you have to do. And then you can move on to creating blocks of time for the things that you want to do. There's some nuance there, like have to do can often be reframed to want to do in your own mind. We can often choose to feel as if we have more autonomy in situations than we actually do. But fundamentally, the ideal week technique and using a calendar tells you how much time you have available to actually give to these things that you care about. So for example, if my goal is to build more muscle and get six-pack abs or whatever the thing is, and I know that I need to do weight training 3 times a week for, let's say, an hour, that means I need to find 3 one-hour blocks of time in my calendar, and then maybe with some buffer on either side for getting to the gym and getting back home. Now, if I physically don't have those blocks of time in my calendar because let's say I'm working 2 jobs and have a family, then it's going to be really tricky. Then I should reconsider what my goal actually is and whether it's actually realistic for me to be able to hit the gym 3 times a week. Now, the way I think of these blocks of time is that these are containers. They're simply containers. And the first step to actually making time for this stuff is to create the containers. When I was working on my book, Feel Good Productivity, link down below, I had containers for about 3 hours basically every morning of the week. From 9 till 12, Monday through Friday, except Wednesdays, which was like team meetings day, I would focus the first 3 hours a day on book writing. Now, how many words I got done was like a further down the line thing, but it's like the first step was to create those containers. And then you can fill those containers with the time, effort, energy, blood, sweat, tears, whatever it takes to fill those containers. But the point is you have to create the containers in the first place. And that is where this technique of time blocking really shines. Let's now move on to step.
This dude's stealing all my stuff, man.
Yeah, I mean, you started talking about the calendar stuff prior to, but yeah, this is where he was going to go into. Yeah, go ahead. What are your thoughts about this? And go ahead.
Yeah, this is something that I've done a similar presentation just on scheduling, just on calendaring, just on creating these. I even use the word containers, for all these things that you want to do. And I talk to my students about this frequently. I mean, this is certainly the strategy, the process that I go through, and I have regularly occurring time periods where it resets. So like right now my schedule's more open. There's certain things that are still on my schedule, but it's pretty open. But when the school year gets back in, which will be Monday, it'll be much more scheduled. Everything will be, addressed. Everything will be handled, because if I don't have a time period to address the things that I'm saying are important or critical, or I want to make these improvements in my life this year, I want to make these, I have these goals in mind, I have this, and if I don't actually have the time to accommodate that, then you might as well just change what it is that you're saying that you want to do. Just eliminate that from your list. And he even said the thing about the realistic thing. I mean, I even mentioned that I was probably doing too much stuff. And I realized that I was also in that time period, I realized that I was doing too much stuff for other people. Stuff that, yeah, it's still my creative output. I still have access to arrangements and different things, but ultimately, to use the example from before, playing in church is not building my empire. That doesn't build my empire, right? That builds somebody else's empire, and that's okay. I can be involved in helping somebody else to build their empire if I'm getting something out of it. But once I got to the place where I decided, where it was obvious to me that I was not getting what it was that I wanted to get out of it anymore, then you just have to you make different decisions. So now that energy, all that creative energy, can be put into things that have my name on them, which, I'm going to be in a better situation. And things can start off like, oh man, but how are you going to replace the income? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? But, you'll figure it out. I'm not trying to suggest that people do reckless stuff. Don't quit your job until you know what you're doing. Don't quit your job until you have another one. Don't quit your job until you've worked whatever this other thing that you're going to do is. You've worked that up into a similar income or whatever it is. Be smart about how you do it. Sometimes, though, you can't be smart. Sometimes you're sort of forced to do it. And better get to work.
Yes. And this is number 3. It seems like this is probably be a 3-parter. If at number 3 we are already at because he has a list of 9 things, right?
Yeah.
And we've done 3 so far. And
for a little bit there, I thought it was going to be a 9-parter. I was like, oh man, we haven't even got off the first point. We can keep going on the first point.
Oh yeah, we could have gone on that goal setting thing all night long. That would have been easy. The thing that he mentioned there about, I believe he called it the ideal week method, right? Which will be the week where you're doing quote unquote, you're starting with the important things, right? To continue with that whole context of important versus urgent and all that kind of stuff. Ideal week method, he puts in the important things first. This is and I'm sure people have seen this. Dr. Thunder, you've seen that thing about filling a jar with rocks and then pebbles and then sand, right? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Rocks, then pebbles, then sand. I mean, I've seen that.
The thing is, if you got rocks, pebbles, and sand, whereby rocks are the most important things, the most basic foundational things, and you have pebbles and you have sand. If you put in the sand first, you're not going to be able to fit in the pebbles and the rocks, right?
Right.
Into the same jar in the same volume. But if you put in the larger things first, and then you put in the pebbles to fill in the cracks, and then you put in the sand, and everything fits. It's an analogy, okay? Right? One has to point out these things for cleanliness of thought. I'm not saying that it's a rule of law, these rocks have some inherent wisdom in there. but it's just an analogy and that really encapsulates the fact that if you don't set yourself up for the important things first, you're never going to be able to catch up with them. Okay.
Yep.
And one point also comes to mind in this regard, which is balancing things. Okay. Even if balance is what you want, right? Let's say, for example, it is a balanced weight of rocks, pebbles, and sands, right? So you're going to end up being balanced. What this shows is a concept in physics called path dependence. In other words, it's important what you do first, right? That's what path dependence is about, right? You're going to end up with equal amounts of rock, pebbles, and sand, but you can't just do it in any particular order, okay? It makes a lot more sense to wash your shirt before you iron it than to iron it and then wash it. But in terms of if you're just looking at balance, yes, you did wash and you did iron, okay? But these are path dependent things. Lots of things in life are that way, including your values, let's say. And this tends to be also the differences in people in terms of what they value. People would want balance, let's say, within, if we want to make the dichotomy between your personal responsibility and then your social responsibility, right? Generally speaking, people want balance in this. But all the difference in the world is in whether somebody sees doing their personal responsibility first and then balancing with social responsibility, or they do social responsibility first and then try to balance their personal own thing, whatever it may mean to them, their self-care or whatever, right? Their growth, whatever it may be, right? These two people are going to seem very different. They're going to be very different, okay? For many reasons we can kind of imagine. So you're trying to balance in this scales of justice type of scale, two rocks, right? And you put one rock first and you put the other rock first. But it turns out that which rock you put first makes all of the difference. It tends to be the case that when you start with one, it changes your view. If you're more of I'm going to be inwardly focused person, let's say like a Dr. Thunder, you're going to focus on your kind of like this kind of yourself, and I have to mention, yes, it sounds selfish, but obviously we're not idiots. We know what we're talking about, right? But if you're focusing on yourself first, the way Dr. Thunder balances social responsibility is going to be very different from the person who starts with social responsibility first and then balances with focusing on themselves, right? So lots of things in life are path dependent. There's an importance here. Why that concept came up is regarding what you place first in that jar called your week. He talked about the ideal week where he put the most important things first. And I brought up the imagery of being able to fit those rocks in first. Okay. And if you're doing a company, for example, there are some basic things that you need to get down first. It'll be, let's say, product, okay, or service, whatever it is. You got to hone that down, right? And then there's some other things which are sand-like, which are more like the user interface tweak, right? Let's say you use a FinApp software, right? Anybody who uses an app, that they're constantly evolving these apps, right? So those things that they do to improve the functionality, improve the user interface. Or you have Coinbase app, you're trading crypto, and they have a new interface now. They have the weekly candles, they have the second candle, for anyone who understands this, all this crap, right? But the point is, if you start out this company thinking about, my user interface has got to be perfect, I have to have this chart and this chart and this, it'll never get off the ground, bro. Right? You got to understand how to prioritize these things. So it's just different ways of me talking about this importance of path dependence, what you do first being very important, and whatnot. But we are at that time, and we're keeping it nice and neat at an hour and a half, I guess. But we only went through 3 points. And I'll just kind of do a quick synopsis here if I can, and you can give your closing thoughts and we can wrap it up, right? But basically, he went over setting goals, and I believe breaking it down, and then the time boundaries type stuff. When it comes to setting goals, he mentioned the short, medium, and long-term way of thinking about it, right? Just think about 50 years down the line. I don't know what your horizon is, right? 10, 20, right? What's long-term for you? What would you like to be? What would you like to be? Where would you like to be at? If we use a celebration kind of model, what would you like to be celebrating at that point? And then you kind of fill in the intermediate goals and the short-term goals. We also mentioned that this thing called goal setting is very important because it involves a change of your identity. It involves a change of many things that you have to do both internally and externally. And Dr. Thunder mentioned about, well, meal prepping, for example, if your goal is to lose weight, it's not just, I've decided to lose weight. Now I'm going to just generate this amorphous thing called willpower, right? And it's just going to go through with momentum and all those other things that Dr. Thunder doesn't like, right? But breaking it down, that one is kind of, it makes perfect sense, okay? Breaking it down makes sense into what you would like. And then we talked about the calendar thing with the time boundaries and whatnot. Something I wanted to mention, which is just to add to the maximizing your potential aspect. And this has to do with having that what's at the top of your hierarchy. What's at the top of your hierarchy thing. Around the areas where I was talking about you being in an island and you have the resources that you would have to do or would need to do anything, what would you do? And then I gave a kind of a personal anecdote about myself. And I wanted to just say, there's this guy called Nassim Taleb, Nicholas Taleb, and another guy called Peter Thiel. And these two guys are the kinds of people that I call applied philosophers. As a matter of fact, Peter Thiel is not the richest man in the world, but he's the richest applied philosopher in the world. You know, he's a billionaire, funded Facebook, and he's kind of, started PayPal with Elon Musk, and he's up there, right? I call him an applied philosopher because the reason I'm just adding some context here, complete sidebar, no need to but context regarding why this philosophy thing that I say that is kind of the hierarchy that I like. I like that priest/philosophy thing. That's really where I am, right? But what the hell does that have to do with doing all these things in the world? Well, in my particular brand of philosophy, if you're not doing things in the world, it's a shout out to faith without works, let's say, right? That's one way to look at it, right? Because I really think that if you're not doing, I don't really think you understand the world that we're living in, man. Like the world, shout out to Jordan Peterson, is a forum for action. Okay. Not just a place where you just sit and think. So, because a lot of non-practitioners, right? In theory, there's no difference between theory and practice, but in practice, there is a big difference between theory and practice. Anybody, well, like shout out to Dr. Thunder, you're a perfect example. You're a practitioner of music, but you're also a theoretician. But you understand that in practice, there's a huge difference between that theory and practice, really, that that there's a little bit of extra juice or wisdom, or your ear, Dr. Thunder, will perk up a little bit more to listen to the advice of some high-level theoretician whom also is a high-level practitioner, right? It's just better. That's what I call these guys applied philosophers, and it's not just about the fact that they're rich, but also I think that they have very important philosophical thoughts and modes of being, right? Just to round up that whole thing regarding it's a very important thing that I think that again, back to this faith without works, in many different aspects of life, it does manifest itself where people, especially smart people, downplay the physical, right? Now, I feel kind of crazy calling them smart. Okay, but you know what I mean? These are the high IQ types who want to downplay the physical. They want to downplay the world of action, the world of getting things done. They want to put it, blah, blah, blah. But I clearly see that's such low-level nonsense. These guys they have not even started living if you don't understand that this world is a place where you have to act. Okay, you have to act. You have to do things. You have to get in there. You have to get dirty, right? And yes, also philosophize to the best of your ability if that is your lane. But for someone like me, the highest level philosopher is the person who actually applied something. And well, that's my synopsis, was my little sidebar thought there on applied philosophy.
Yeah. I nothing really more to add. Happy New Year, everyone. And make sure you come back next week for another riveting episode of Getting Ish Done with Ike and Dr. Thunder. We'll also be back in the saddle with another case closed on Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And make sure you come over to my channel in the morning for a Rolling Thunder episode, and then tomorrow night for another episode of Two Dads React. And we'll be getting our tinfoil hat out and speculating and pondering the end of the world. All right, so that's about it.
That is about it indeed. It's the end of the show. Peace.
Peace.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what was behind the curtain, the face of evil lurking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, that either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make me get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make me get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
I dip on top when they kill so boom. Word 'em up. Peace out.